a team of Navy SEALs enters a remote mountain compound to rescue a captured aid worker. One tiny miscalculation shatters their plan, trapping them between collapsing tunnels, armed militants, and a ticking deadline. As chaos erupts, one silent SEAL steps into danger alone, driven not by orders, but by a promise he made long before the mission began. His mistake nearly kills the entire team, but his courage saves them in a way no one expects. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Tell me in the comments, and please subscribe, so you never miss another cinematic story like this. The moment the floor collapsed beneath him, Chief Petty Officer Elias Kane understood the truth. One mistake can erase a lifetime of discipline. Dust surged upward like a drowning breath, swallowing the narrow mountain tunnel in a choking cloud as the ground yawned open. Kane's gloved fingers scraped rock, searching for anything to anchor himself, but gravity seized him first. His body plunged into darkness, the echo of falling gravel chasing him like a broken memory. Above, the rest of Alpha Team 6 froze, just long enough to feel the tremor of dread bury itself into their chests. They were deep inside enemy territory. No reinforcements, no exits they controlled, no margin for error, and now their team leader had vanished into a black pit carved by time, war, and, whether they knew it yet or not, a single human mistake. Elias Kane was known as the Quiet CL, the one who never raised his voice, never argued, never broke formation. His silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline hammered through years of loss, sacrifice, and the brutal mathematics of war. Yet hours earlier, as the team assembled before infiltration, even his stoic face carried something unusual, a shadow of memory, a wound reopened by the name of the hostage they were sent to rescue. Dr. Mara Ellison, a humanitarian volunteer who had stayed behind to protect the children in a war-scarred village. She was captured when militants stormed the area. Her disappearance rippled across the intelligence community, but it carved deepest into Elias Kane. Because Mara wasn't just another rescue objective. She was the person he once promised he'd always return for. And now, trapped under tons of stone, his promise hung in the air like an accusation. Years before this mission, before scars etched themselves across his hands, Elias Kane had stood in a desert hospital smelling of antiseptic, diesel, and distant gunfire. He'd met Mara during a joint medical humanitarian operation. She wasn't military, but she moved with a courage he rarely saw in anyone who hadn't served. While others flinched at echoes of artillery, she held injured children close, whispering songs from a life untouched by war. Elias noticed the way her hands shook after long shifts, not with fear, but with compassion struggling beneath exhaustion. They spoke only a few times, their conversations brief and weighted with the strange tenderness that blooms only in places where life is fragile. But on his final day at the outpost, she stepped out of a dim corridor with her scrubs stained by work and dust in her hair. "You save lives by fighting," she said softly. "I save lives by mending." Different paths, but the same reason. He remembered staring at her hands, bandaged from treating too many wounded, and replying with something he hadn't planned. "If you ever need me, I'll come back." She smiled, a tired, hopeful smile he never forgot. Now, years later, that promise had returned with a vengeance, wrapped in intelligence reports and satellite images of a mountain compound. Elias accepted the mission before the briefing even ended. He told no one why. Silent men do not confess the ghosts they carry. The mountain tunnels were older than any map. Carved by miners decades earlier, abandoned, claimed by militants, and rewired with traps, dead ends, and makeshift prison chambers. The SEALs navigated the darkness with disciplined precision, but something felt off. The air carried a faint metallic scent, as if the earth were hiding something sharp, something waiting. The team's junior operator, Ramirez, kept glancing at the floor as though following a rhythm only he could detect. "They sealed some parts recently," Ramirez whispered privately in his thoughts. "But this pattern, these beams, they're too weak for load bearing." But he said nothing. Not out of fear. Out of trust in the plan, trust in his own training. Trust in the silence that governed their movements. Yet silence is where mistakes often hide. And a mistake was already breathing beneath their feet. As they approached the central cavern, the last checkpoint before the hostage location, the sense of unease deepened. The tunnel walls trembled with the faint vibrations of machinery. A generator hummed somewhere distant. And faintly, impossibly, Elias thought he heard a cry. A child, a woman, or memory. The boundary blurred. Then it happened, the tremor that loosened the ground, shifting weight in a way the weakened beams could not withstand. A single misstep, a single displaced stone, a single moment too late to notice the cracks, and the earth swallowed him whole. The team moved instantly. Ropes deployed. Scanning lights flickered. Hearts hammered so loudly they felt like trespassers in the silence. But Elias didn't scream. He did what he always did, breathed deeply, silently, accepting pain as part of the rhythm of survival. He hit the lower level hard, dust filling his lungs. His ribs ignited with fire. Yet through the haze, a truth emerged that chilled him deeper than the fall. He wasn't alone. This wasn't a natural cavern. This was a holding chamber. And in the corner, bound, bruised, and exhausted, was Mara Ellison. For a moment time didn't move. Dust hung in the air like suspended memories. The world shrank to the space between them. Her voice cracked through it all. Elias. Her disbelief wasn't relief. It was the fragile hope of someone who had stopped believing rescue was possible. He said nothing, only pressed a finger to his lips with the quiet authority of a man who had mastered silence. Above, the team searched for him, panic crawling behind their professionalism. They couldn't descend, the tunnel was too unstable. They couldn't blow through, it would collapse the entire structure. They needed a route, a signal, a plan. But Elias, bruised and recovering from the fall, realized before anyone else the militants were already moving. Footsteps echoed from deeper tunnels. Mara trembled. Elias placed her behind him, silent as always, eyes focused, breath steadying as the instincts of a lifetime descended with terrifying clarity. His mistake might have trapped the team, but his silence would become their shield. 3 armed guards entered, rifles raised, speaking in low, heated tones. Their surprise at seeing a SEAL alive and standing was brief, replaced quickly by screams of orders, by fingers trembling on triggers. Elias didn't give them time. The fight was brutal, close and personal, a battle fought in the claustrophobic dark. The air filled with dust, sweat, and the raw energy of life contested. Elias moved like a man forged from instinct and discipline. No wasted motions, no hesitation. But even victory tasted like danger. Because now every militant in the compound knew someone was inside. Above, Alpha Team heard distant shouts, followed by the unmistakable thud of bodies hitting stone. Ramirez inhaled sharply, guilt carving through him. He had noticed the beams. He had sensed the danger. He had doubted speaking up. And now their leader was alone below, facing an entire network of hostile fighters, with only a hostage and a collapsing tunnel between them. His silence, once loyalty, was now a burden heavier than any gear. Master Chief Rowan, the oldest and most stoic member of the team, placed a heavy hand on Ramirez's shoulder. In a whisper meant only for Ramirez's conscience, he murmured, "Heroes don't stay silent when the truth can save lives." It wasn't anger. It was guidance, sharp, honest, and necessary. Ramirez swallowed the weight of it. Then he spoke, not loudly, not confidently, but bravely. "There's a structural weakness. It wasn't the fall. These tunnels were rigged decades ago. But I saw a support beam pattern upstream. If we cut through the side wall there, it leads to the lower chamber." Rowan nodded once, not in approval but in respect. Silence shattered. Action ignited. For the first time, Ramirez felt the power of his own voice, and Elias felt a distant, quaking hope, as though a hand he couldn't see had begun to dig toward him. As Elias navigated the lower tunnels with Mara, guiding her hand by hand through the dark, a painful realization hit him like cold iron. He had stepped on a weakened fault line. His miscalculation weakened the entire upper structure. His mistake, his rush, his distraction, nearly cost his team their lives. Shame rippled through him. A man built on precision had let emotion cloud judgment. But Mara, limping beside him, whispered with the softness of a memory he had carried for years. "You came back, even when I stopped believing anyone would." Her voice wasn't judgment. It was forgiveness wrapped in gratitude. And for the first time since falling, Elias felt the weight on his chest shift into something manageable, not less heavy, but more bearable. Alpha Team broke through the side wall moments later, emerging like silent phantoms, weapons steady, discipline sharp as steel. The relief on their faces when they saw Kane alive was brief. Duty came first, emotion later. They secured Mara, regrouped, and prepared to extract. But militants were already converging on the tunnels, shadows moving like a rising tide. The rescue operation had turned into a siege. And deep inside that mountain, the team held the only advantage that mattered: Silent unity, silent discipline, silent strength. Elias raised a hand, an unspoken order. Alpha Team formed their defensive circle. Mara was shielded at the center. The darkness tightened. The enemy roared like a wave crashing into stone. But the SEALs stood like an unbreakable wall, the kind forged not through muscle but through loyalty. Hold, Rowan murmured. Steady, Elias breathed. Ramirez whispered to himself, not this time. Not my silence. As militants stormed the chamber and the SEALs prepared for their last stand, Elias spoke the words that would later be repeated by soldiers, civilians, and anyone who had ever carried the burden of responsibility. Courage isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the will to rise after them. Later, when Mara looked at the team surrounding her with unwavering resolve, she whispered another line that resonated in their hearts. Some heroes fight with noise, but the greatest ones fight with silence. And when Ramirez took position beside Elias, he uttered the words of a man learning what it means to be a warrior. Silence protects, but truth saves. The final battle was a storm in darkness. Alpha Team fought with precise ferocity, covering each other with movements so synchronized it seemed choreographed by instinct itself. Every moment felt eternal. The flash of muzzle bursts illuminating grit, covered faces, the metallic scent of adrenaline, the thunder of footsteps echoing through stone. Then, a miracle of timing, a distant explosion collapsed a secondary tunnel, not trapping them, but barricading the approaching militants. The path to extraction cleared. Ramirez led Mara through the escape route. Rowan covered their breakthrough, and Elias, bruised, bloodied, and steady as iron, took the rear, refusing to leave until every member was safe. When they emerged into the night, the cold mountain air felt like freedom itself. A rescue helicopter hovered above, its spotlight sweeping over the team as they guided Mara aboard. As villagers and aid workers later gathered, news of the mission spread. People stood in rows, silent, offering a gesture more powerful than applause. Respect, gratitude, acknowledgement of unseen battles. Nobody asked Elias about his fall. Nobody blamed him. The team stood with him, silently, unwaveringly. And in that silence, justice bloomed. Mara rested her hand on Elias's as medics checked her vitals. Her voice trembled with memories too heavy for words. You kept your promise, she whispered. He didn't answer aloud, but the faint tightening of his grip said everything. As the helicopter lifted into the night, the world below became a blur of shadows and stars. Elias watched the mountains fade into darkness, carrying with him a truth carved by blood, dust, and redemption. Sometimes one mistake nearly destroys a team, but the same man who caused it can be the one who saves them. If this story moved you even a little, subscribe for more cinematic, emotionally driven stories honoring the silent heroes who walk among us.